Thomas Malone dragged his heavy fishing net across the deserted Bahamian beach, his boots sinking into wet sand with each labored step. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple when something unusual caught his eye. Tangled in a clump of seaweed near the water's edge lay a bright orange object. Thomas knelt, brushing away strands of kelp to reveal a pristine life vest. His breath hitched as his fingers traced the bold black lettering. Flight 299. Twilight descended over the churning waters of the Bermuda Triangle as an aerial drone skimmed the darkening horizon. Below, the ocean swirled in hypnotic patterns of deep blue and emerald. Radar pulses echoed through the heavy air, while stark white title cards materialized against the turbulent seascape, each letter casting brief reflections on the waves below before vanishing into the gathering darkness. Grainy archival footage transported us back to Miami International Airport in 1987. Passengers in bell-bottoms and shoulder-padded jackets streamed across the tarmac toward a waiting Boeing 727. Inside the cockpit, Captain Vance methodically conducted his pre-flight checks, his weathered hands moving confidently across switches and dials. The humid Florida air shimmered outside the windows as ground crew gave final clearance signals. Flight 299 cruised smoothly at 35,000 feet, a silver bullet piercing through endless blue sky. Sunlight streamed through the cockpit windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. First Officer Chen performed his instrument scans, calling out readings in a calm, professional tone. Below, the turquoise waters gave way to the deep indigo of open ocean. A digital map display showed their path crossing an invisible boundary, the southern tip of the Bermuda Triangle. As Flight 299 penetrated deeper into the region, newspaper headlines materialized like ghostly warnings. Flight 19 vanishes with 14 souls. SS Marine Sulphur Queen lost without trace. An animated map highlighted the deadly triangle's boundaries: Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, forming points of a mysterious polygon that had swallowed hundreds of ships and planes. For decades, this patch of ocean had defied explanation, earning ominous nicknames like the Devil's Triangle and the Graveyard of the Atlantic. At the Coast Guard station, radio operator Rodriguez adjusted his headphones. Static crackled before Captain Vance's calm, measured voice cut through. Miami Center, this is Flight 299, experiencing minor instrument fluctuations. Request permission to descend to 32,000 feet. Rodriguez leaned toward his microphone to respond when suddenly, a burst of harsh static erupted, swallowing the transmission whole. Silence followed, thick and unnerving. In Miami Center's dim radar room, controllers stared at glowing green screens. Flight 299's transponder signal, a steady pulsing dot moments before, now flickered erratically. One technician tapped his monitor. "Come on, 299, talk to me." The blip stuttered once, twice, then dissolved into nothingness. Across the room, controllers exchanged confused glances, fingers frozen over their consoles as the reality sank in. An entire airliner had simply vanished from their screens. As dawn broke over the Naval Air Station, search planes roared to life on the runway. Propellers sliced through the pink-hued morning mist as aircraft taxied into formation. Meanwhile, at the airport terminal, families huddled together, their faces etched with worry, hands clutching photographs of loved ones. The rising sun cast long shadows across the tarmac, illuminating the anxious crowd as the first search plane lifted into the sky, beginning what would become the largest maritime rescue operation in history. The National Transportation Safety Board launched their formal inquiry in a room papered with aeronautical charts, Investigators spread weather reports across the table, their fingers tracing Flight 19's last known coordinates. Clear skies, perfect conditions. The data offered no clues, only deepening the mystery. A lead investigator tapped the map thoughtfully, his voice tight with frustration. Nothing on radar, no distress calls. It's like they flew straight off the edge of the world. Search planes carved meticulous grid patterns over the Atlantic, their radar scouring the endless blue. Below, sonar buoys plunged into the depths, listening for any metallic heartbeat. But the ocean returned only silence. Screens displayed an unnerving void. No wreckage, no oil slick, just fathomless indigo stretching to the horizon. A rescue coordinator radioed back to base, his voice cracking with exhaustion. Negative contact, sector clear. The emptiness swallowed hope with every passing hour. At a makeshift memorial, grief hung thick as fog. Relatives clutched framed photos against their chests, their eyes hollow. One woman stood at a forest of microphones, trembling as she pressed a child's worn teddy bear to her cheek. "My husband and baby girl were on that flight," she whispered, tears carving paths through her pallor. "Tell me what took them. Please, just tell me where to look." Reporters lowered their notepads, the silence louder than any question. Deep in a government basement, Agent Wright accepted a manila envelope stamped "Eyes Only." The fluorescent lights hummed as he broke the seal. His eyes scanned the classified pages. Satellite anomalies, electromagnetic spikes near the flight path. His jaw tightened, knuckles whitening around the file. "This changes everything," he muttered to the empty room, the implications coiling in his gut like ice. Some truths were too dangerous for daylight. Wild theories erupted like geysers. Tabloids screamed from newsstands. "Aliens grab jet! Government hides truth!" On late-night talk shows, self-proclaimed experts waved grainy photos. "See these lights? Extraterrestrial intervention," one declared, jabbing at a smudged image. Social media buzzed with tales of time warps and secret experiments. Reason drowned in a sea of speculation, every blurry pixel fueling the frenzy. Dr. Reed offered a colder logic in her university lab. Methane hydrate cylinders hissed as she demonstrated. "Imagine pockets of gas erupting from the seabed," she explained, pointing to bubbles swallowing a model ship. "A plane flies through, instant loss of buoyancy." Animated maps overlaid the ocean floor, magnetic anomalies pulsing like bruises. "Nature has traps we don't understand," she concluded, though her eyes betrayed lingering doubt. Flight simulators recreated the terror. Pilot Vance wrestled phantom controls as instruments spun wildly. Altimeters gone mad, compasses whirling like dervishes. Outside the virtual cockpit, an eerie blue static crackled, thickening into luminous fog. "Systems failing! Can't see!" Vance's simulated voice crackled through headsets. Then, the screens filled with electric blue, swallowing the plane whole. A perfect digital vanishing. The government spokesman faced a storm of cameras, his expression carefully blank. "After exhaustive investigation," he announced, "we suspend the inquiry due to insufficient evidence." Reporters erupted. "What about the anomalies? Why no wreckage?" He offered only stone-faced silence, turning away as shouts chased him off stage. Case closed, answers buried. The void remained, deeper and darker than ever. The years tumbled by like pages ripped from a calendar. At the airport, the memorial plaque dedicated to Flight 299 slowly weathered under sun and rain, its letters growing faint. In her office, Dr. Reed ran a finger over a dusty case file marked 299 before sliding it onto a high shelf. That mystery, once so consuming, now seemed destined to gather dust with the others. On a windswept beach, old fisherman Malone squinted at something tangled in seaweed. He lifted a faded orange life vest. As sunlight hit it, a perfectly preserved airline logo gleamed alongside a clear serial number. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled out his phone. "I found something. You need to see this," he whispered urgently to the authorities. Inside a sterile lab, technicians in white coats carefully examined the vest under ultraviolet light. "No saltwater degradation at all," one murmured in disbelief. Meanwhile, a geologist scraped mineral samples from the fabric. "These traces," she said, her voice tight with excitement. "They match a single location, a remote atoll hundreds of miles off any flight path." News vans descended like locusts on Malone's modest home. Satellite trucks lined the beach, their antennas pointing skyward. Miles away, Dr. Reed watched the chaotic coverage from her cluttered office. The grainy photo of the life vest filled her screen, and that old, cold feeling crept up her spine. After decades, Flight 299 was front-page news again. New technology revealed what old searches missed. Modern sonar scans pulsed through the deep, painting an image of something massive and unnervingly aircraft-shaped on the ocean floor. Aboard a research vessel, scientists held their breath as an ROV, a remotely operated vehicle, plunged into the black water, heading straight for that shadowy silhouette. On the ship's monitors, the ROV cameras pierced the murky depths. Suddenly, strange lights flickered across the screen like underwater lightning, distorting the image. Then, through the silt, something angular and metallic loomed. A wing, a tail. The crew gasped, but in a swirl of sediment, it vanished. "Did you see that?" someone shouted, but the screen showed only empty darkness. Back on land, Dr. Reed pored over newly declassified documents. Page after page was slashed with thick black redaction lines, but one phrase stood clear near the bottom. "Project Blue Book interest confirmed." Her blood ran cold. Blue Book? The government's old UFO investigation unit? What had they known about Flight 299? Under a moonless sky in a deserted park, retired Agent Wright met Dr. Reed. His voice was gravelly, with age and guilt. "What they're not telling you," he began, leaning close. But headlights sliced through the darkness, approaching fast. Wright froze mid-sentence, his eyes wide with fear. "Not here, not now," he hissed, melting back into the shadows before he could say another word. Inside the reconstructed cockpit, Captain Vance wrestled against the shuddering controls. Every muscle strained as the instruments screamed around him. Then, without warning, a blinding white light flooded the cabin. Warning alarms shrieked in overlapping waves, while every gauge needle pinned itself violently against its maximum limit. Through gritted teeth, Vance could only manage a strangled gasp before the light consumed everything. Dr. Chen tapped her laser pointer against a whiteboard swirling with equations. "Imagine space-time as fabric," she explained, voice tight with intensity. "A temporal vortex would crumple it like paper." Her diagrams showed aircraft warping through cosmic whirlpools. As she spoke, ghostly overlays appeared, pilots' testimonies flashing across the screen, each voice echoing variations of the same terrifying phrase. "We lost 17 minutes. Just gone." An old sailor's knotted hands trembled as he recreated the memory. "Wasn't no ordinary storm clouds," he rasped, fingers sketching jagged shapes in the air. "They glowed like coals, swallowed that plane whole." On screen, animated clouds pulsed with eerie light, mirroring his gestures. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Never told nobody before. Who'd believe old Pete saw a metal bird vanish into hell's own lantern? Dr. Reed's pencil froze mid-scribble. There, buried in declassified naval logs, lay the damning evidence. Missile test coordinates from that exact night, stamped 2347 hours. Her finger traced Flight 299's final vector directly through the weapons range. The margin of her notebook bore a single, trembling question mark beside 3 heavily circled words. Accidental shoot-down? The oceanographer's pointer rod swept across animated currents. Prevailing flows move northwest here, she stated firmly. Then her rod jerked abruptly south against the digital tide. But Malone's life vest traveled this impossible path. The screen showed the tiny vest defying oceanic rivers, zigzagging like a puppet on strings until it beached precisely where the boy was found. Nature, she concluded quietly, didn't do this. Grainy 1987 radar footage flickered on the monitor. "There!" the technician exclaimed, freezing the image. A faint blip materialized near Flight 299's signature. With digital enhancement, the speck resolved into a distinct object. Then came the chilling part. In 3 consecutive frames, it accelerated from stationary to Mach 4 instantly. No known aircraft, the tech murmured, could survive those G-forces. Salt crusted Malone's beard as his boat scraped against the remote atoll's shore. Where the Geiger counter had pinpointed the minerals, he chipped at coral with his knife. Suddenly, steel screeched on metal. Embedded in the rock was a twisted silver fragment, unnaturally smooth, cold to the touch. As he lifted it, the Geiger counter erupted in frantic chirps, its needle dancing into the red zone. Chaos erupted on the split-screen debate. Dr. Reed slammed her hand down. Temporal physics explains the radiation, the ufologist countered, eyes wild. Those acceleration rates prove extraterrestrial tech. Meanwhile, the conspiracy theorist leaned into his microphone. Open your eyes, the Navy erased that radar blip. Their voices piled atop each other. Science, aliens, government lies, a cacophony of explanations for the unexplainable. In a dimly lit post office, Agent Wright hesitated before dropping an unmarked envelope into the mailbox. His hands trembled slightly as he released the package containing classified satellite photos destined for Dr. Reed. These weren't just images. They showed a bizarre energy signature pulsing near the last known coordinates of Flight 299. Wright knew this act could end his career, but the guilt over hidden truths weighed heavier than professional consequences. As he walked away into the rain, he kept glancing over his shoulder, haunted by what those photos might reveal. In Dr. Reed's lab, scientists huddled around glowing monitors, their faces lit by the eerie blue light of the satellite images. This defies all known atmospheric phenomena, one researcher whispered, tracing the anomaly's jagged patterns. Another pointed at military footage playing on a side screen. Declassified UAP recordings with identical energy signatures. The room grew quiet as the implications settled over them. "It's a perfect match," Dr. Reed finally said, her voice tight with disbelief. The same unidentifiable energy that baffled the Pentagon had swallowed Flight 299. Deep beneath the Atlantic surface, a submersible's lights cut through the crushing darkness, illuminating swirling sediment where the sonar had pinged a massive object. The pilot leaned forward, breath fogging the viewport as they reached the coordinates. But where wreckage should have been, only undisturbed seabed stretched endlessly. "It was right here," the pilot muttered, tapping the blank sonar display in frustration. Outside, the beams revealed nothing but sand and the occasional fish. No debris, no fuselage, No sign that anything had ever disturbed this silent grave. Haunting music swelled as archival footage flickered across screens. Flight 19's bombers vanishing in 1945, the USS Cyclops disappearing with 300 souls, the ghost ship Ellen Austin found adrift with no crew. Each tragedy played out like chapters in the Triangle's dark legend. Compasses spinning wildly, radios crackling with static before falling silent. Century after century, the same pattern repeated. Vessels and planes swallowed whole, leaving behind only questions and grieving families. The montage whispered what scientists couldn't prove. Some forces defy explanation. At the memorial wall, weathered fingers traced the engraved name Robert Vance, Flight 299. Silver-haired Margaret Reed pressed her palm against the cold stone as Dr. Reed approached. "We've searched everywhere, Margaret," the researcher said gently. The older woman didn't turn, tears cutting paths through wrinkles earned by decades of waiting. "Science has all its answers," she whispered, "but we just want to know what happened to them. Were they afraid? Did it hurt?" Her unanswered questions hung heavy in the salt-tinged air, echoing the grief of generations denied closure. Old Malone stood at the edge of his weathered boat, the coral fragment from Flight 299, glowing amber in the dying light. The ocean stretched before him, swallowing the sun as it had swallowed answers for 70 years. "Some questions ain't meant to be answered," he told the waves, his voice rough with acceptance. With a soft plunk, the coral vanished beneath the dark water. Malone watched the ripples fade, understanding deeper than any sonar scan. The sea keeps what it takes, and man's hunger for explanation means nothing to ancient mysteries. Back in her lab, surrounded by maps and sensor readouts, Dr. Reed switched off the last monitor. The energy signatures, the sonar ghosts, the missing debris, all contradicted every logical explanation. She picked up a faded photo of Flight 299's smiling crew. "We've chased electrons and ocean currents," she admitted to the empty room. "But the evidence points nowhere. This mystery..." Her gaze drifted to the window, where stars pierced the night sky. "May outlive us all." For the first time, the scientist acknowledged defeat, not to lack of evidence, but to its impossible nature. The radar screen glowed in the dark control room, frozen on Flight 299's last known position. A lone, pulsing blip in the vast emptiness of the grid. Then, like a final breath, the signal dissolved into crawling static. The coordinates remained, numbers burning against the blackness. 25 degree and 71 degree LDW. But the space they marked held nothing. No wreckage, no signals, no clues. Just empty ocean and the hum of dead instruments, preserved at the exact moment when two sentient souls stepped from reality into legend. As the sun bled into the horizon, painting the Bermuda Triangle in gold and violet, Malone's fishing boat became a tiny silhouette against the infinite sea. Somewhere below, Flight 299 rested with all the other lost things. Ships, planes, dreams. The waves whispered secrets they'd never surrender. For 70 years, the world sought answers. But tonight, as darkness reclaimed the water, only one truth remained. Flight 299 had gone where all such mysteries eventually reside, beyond proof, beyond science, into the realm of eternal wonder.